Well, we should probably kick things off with a round of introductions. What do y'all think?
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll kick things off. I'm moderating today's panel. So my name is Jillian Bierman. I'm a director of SMB mid-market and scaled customer success at Logic Monitor. I might have some fans in the crowd.
Hey, y'all. My name is Taylor Hodges. I'm born and bred in Texas, so very excited to be here in Austin today. I am the global head of customer success for the Corrigo product at JLL Technologies.
And my name is Chris Dishman. I am the head of customer success at Tatango.
All right, so our topic today is CS operations. So to start things off, can you guys tell me a little bit about kind of how each of you manage operations in your companies?
Very carefully. No.
Good answer.
No, we've been going through a pretty significant evolution over the past couple of years. Our team has grown and shrunk and grown and shrunk, and we've expanded to new products and then come back to our core product focus. So really just trying to define our processes, train our teams, and understand the metrics that we want to capture in order to determine how successful we are in our operational efforts.
Awesome. So I'm relatively new at Tatango, about 3 months, but was a client of Tatango for a number of years since 2017. So at a company called On24, and we went through a pretty large growth spurt through COVID and the pandemic, and very much so leveraged our CS operations team there. So built a team of multiple people there, and then of course being now in the customer success space is a little bit more interesting, especially having a platform that we leverage. So, we obviously do a lot as it relates to how we manage the platform and how we drive the CS operations and the metrics around that. So.
All right, I'm hearing a theme in our answers here, focusing on metrics. So let's dig in there a little bit further. What are the key metrics you guys focus on from an operations standpoint, KPIs? Expand a little.
You go first.
I'll go first. So our CS operations team is a person of one. So obviously metrics are very important to that person. And, we're really leaned on in our organization to provide those metrics to drive the strategy of the broader group, right? It's not just customer success. It's how do we leverage this customer base, the work that the CSMs do, and to drive the strategy of the overall company. So, data is such an important part of what we do. We track things from, outcomes, what executive level relationships we have, how quickly are we getting from deployment to the time of value. There's any number of metrics. It's ever evolving. We're trying to improve upon what we do every single day. So it's kind of our journey.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Doug had mentioned in the last session just about it's the whole company, right? And you've seen that throughout numerous presentations. It's not just a CS function. And so when you think about CS ops, and I know a lot of people like you are even in large companies may only have a CS ops team of one. So when you start thinking about what that looks like and how that person, or people, if you're lucky enough to have more than one of them, are able to kind of execute and support not just the CSMs through that function, but also the rest of the organization, whether it's sales and marketing, in the alignment across that, and then how you're orchestrating the customer journey through that is critical. So, as for KPIs, obviously, we all look at NRR and things like that. So those are the standard kind of lagging indicators. But when you think about things like customer health, how are you measuring customer health, and what are the things that you're doing along the line to be able to understand, okay, we need to rally the troops around a given customer at a given time, and do that. And of course, we think about NPS and, CSAT and all of the other kind of good leading indicators. But I'm a huge proponent of customer health just because of the fact that it encompasses so much more than that. And that's where, CS Ops is kind of, to me, it's a close place in my heart because that's the person that's going to be looking at and understanding, where is, the customer and are we doing any kind of, I'm going to call it regression analysis to look at and understand, okay, is our health right? Are we iterating on it on a regular basis? Those kind of things. Because it's not a set it and forget it for sure,
Excellent. That's such an important point to make. And looking at Doug's presentation that he just gave, how do you guys look at segmenting things differently using that data? Do you look at Chris, to your point, do you look at the same health metrics for your large enterprise customers compared to your more scaled customers?
I would say that I don't think you can, right? And when you think about customer segmentation, it could be something about, it could be verticalized, it could be, product based, it could be size of ARR. I mean, there's so many different factors that go into how you have to look at a customer because, quite frankly, your enterprise customer or a customer in a certain vertical, you can't say that their health is measured the same as, somebody that's a very, low touch SMB or small scale type customer. So you have to look at them through a different lens. And then you have to, and I'll probably use the word iterate probably 17 or 18 times, so bear with me. But it's like my favorite word because it's kind of where we are. You can't look at our customer base and just say, we're going to do this one thing. We have to look at each one of those segments and we have to constantly evaluate the success of those and then determine how to adjust and move and shift based on the outcomes.
Absolutely. I mean, I think iteration is key, right? Things evolve, the sponsors within your organization change, the internal strategy changes, your customer strategy change. There's economic impact that will drive, what outcomes your customers are expecting from you and the way that you measure value. So I think that, consistently coming back to the table, understand what's working, what's not working, how you can better define those outcomes is paramount to any organization.
All right, so you guys have mentioned data a fair amount, and I think probably everybody in the room will agree with me that data is both the best thing and the worst thing about operations. So how do you guys tackle the data challenge in managing your operations?
So data's a tough one because it has to get in there somehow, right?
It does.
It's not magic. It doesn't come out of thin air. So, we really rely on our CSM team to enter the data that they're getting from their customers, whether that's, engagements, whether that's outcomes, whether it's calls to action, whether it's risk factors. All of those things provide us with a better picture about our customer and how we can better serve them. So making sure that your CSMs are well trained on the expectations for your data, I think is really key to the success in that area. I think communicating with the broader organization about the value that your data provides is also very important because, we're the ones on the front lines with the customer every day. We're all here because of our customers. That's how we make money. That's how we get paid. That's how we, get to survive in this economy, right? So I think it's really important that to start at the foundational level, make sure that your team understands the expectations and that you hold them accountable to that and make sure that they're on board with your strategy and efforts in that area.
Yeah, and what's funny is when we often see people start talking about data and integration of data into various systems and things like that. And one of the things that I've seen so many times is, I'm going to use the phrase boil the ocean, right? People want to bring in not just the data you need, but every data that they've ever seen ever, right? And you go, well, what's the point of the data? So let's take a moment and go, what is the data telling us? We don't need data for data's sake, right? What we need data to drive a certain action and ultimately end up in a certain outcome. And so when you look at that and you start, and again, being in a customer success platform, we're constantly fighting against people wanting to go, okay, I'm going to bring in, loads and loads of information. And so we have to constantly push back on that and say, listen, let's talk about what's important. Like, what are you trying to measure? And then let's hone in on those things and let's do those things really, really well. And then we can, and I'll use the word iterate again, we can adjust and modify and shift, and then we can bring in more pieces of data that are going to tell us and fill out the picture a little bit more, right? And then over the period of time, you're going to continue to evolve that into, this kind of holistic view of your customer. And then, of course, as we talked about before, that's ever changing too, right? So as your CSMs are looking at it and we're tightly aligned with them, they're able to come back and say, this data or this information isn't jiving with what's happening in this customer, and then you take that and you kind of fold it back into the process again, and you start, working through that.
So you're sure we can't bring in 2,000 data points and have all of them be super effective?
You can try.
Yeah, I mean, planning and prioritizing, I think, is really important because, you can't fly when you come out of the womb, right? You have to learn how to crawl, to walk, to run. And so, starting small, starting with what's most important, what's going to create the most value quickly, I think is really important when you're creating that strategy.
Yeah, and it's also, it's kind of, we like to use the word moments that matter, right? So it's as you're looking through that and you start thinking about the customer success journey as a product, right? So you're looking at it, you're developing it, you're iterating on it, you're adjusting, you're measuring, and then you're kind of going, okay, what mattered, what didn't, how does that work, and then how do we continually evolve and grow that? And it's not something that happens overnight, but the other thing that's interesting is it doesn't have to, right? If you can make one small step, and if you can create one, insight into a customer, then you've already won for today, and then you can start building on that tomorrow, right? So it's easy to think you've got to jump in and just kind of eat the whole elephant. I'm going to use all of the different phrases today. Let's take one bite out of the elephant. But I mean, it's true, and it can be overwhelming when you start that process. But to just kind of go, okay, let's just take one step at a time. Let's do one thing really well, and then we can continue to build on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a really interesting concept, talking about prioritizing and how do you pick kind of which step to take first. And Taylor, you'd mentioned do things that are going to have an impact that are maybe quicker first. Tell us a little bit about how you prioritize. If you've got 800, probably that's not even too high to estimate, things that you could be doing with your one operations person, how do you prioritize?
Sure. So in our organization, we're going through a new structure where we're realigning vertically. So historically, we hadn't been aligned vertically. We were aligned more geographically, and we realized that wasn't working in the sales motion. So we are very revenue focused in our company. Amen mentioned earlier, CS having their own seat at the table. We're not quite there yet. We're more part of the revenue team, and so revenue is what matters to us. So understanding what your organization's priorities are will help you align what your priorities as a customer success operations team should be. Because if you can't provide value to your organization and show them what matters to them, then you're not going to make any progress, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to be valued.
And again, the session about not being a cost center, right? So you have to look at it, and I'm going to go with the revenue answer as well. I mean, what's most important? Well, we kind of have to protect our revenue because it's kind of what pays the bills, right? So when you start looking at that from a segmentation standpoint, we look at it and we go, okay, well, what are the customers that we want to make sure that we've got a very high level of touch on? And then we can kind of work into the scale approach, on other customers. We want to make sure that they've got a great process, and we want to make sure that they have a similar journey. And you can certainly do that through a variety of different automations and tech touches, as you've heard throughout the day. So definitely something that can be achieved. But, when you start looking at it, you're like, okay, well, where do I need to put, where am I going to put my chips? I'm going to put them somewhere where I can make sure that I'm driving additional revenue, I'm growing the accounts, I'm creating upsell opportunities, those kind of things. So.
Okay, so we're focusing in on revenue here, which is always a good topic. We all love that. What are some tools and processes? And you guys have mentioned tools kind of a couple times as we've been talking through using operations effectively. But what are some tools and processes that you guys have found most important in an operations standpoint to drive revenue?
Sure. So the customer success journey in our company, has grown very slowly, very carefully. We initially invested in Strike Deck as our customer success tool. That tool is now being sunset. And so we're actually on the cusp of implementing Tatango. So we found a new tool. We're very excited about it. And just really defining what you want from the tool, what the outcomes are that are meaningful to you, and how you want to organize that tool, step by step, creating a very defined plan. How could we go from here to here quickly while receiving value, and just making sure that everyone understands how to use that tool, that you're adopting that tool, and that you're continually iterating on the strategy for it.
It's rubbing off on her, I think. Yeah, and it is interesting. It's one of those things where as we start talking about, and obviously I use this neat tool called Tatango. You ought to check it out. But I mean, it is something that as you start looking at what you're going to roll out and how you're going to implement, as I said earlier, you need to look at what are the outcomes you're shooting for, right? Start with the end in mind. It's easy to get stuck in the weeds. It's easy to start, again, kind of going back to that whole concept of all of the data. It's like, let's look at the very end and let's figure out what is the outcome for my customer, not for me, not for my metric, not because I can get somebody onboarded in 47 days as a median onboarding time. It's like that's not it. It's like where are they actually getting value, and when we figure out what that is, and then you start backing into it and you say, okay, well, what journey do I need to build in order to get my customer to their outcome? And then you start mapping that across various segments, and and then again you can kind of continually build on that. But as you're thinking about what matters to your company, well, it's again, we were talking about ARR, we're talking about revenue. I mean, that's what keeps the lights on, and so you can look at it through that lens, and then that allows you to understand how do you drive forward with your ops team or whoever you have that's running that particular function. So
excellent. One other question. I'm sure in your many years of experience, you guys have run into some challenges from an operations standpoint. Never. All right. Well, never mind. I guess we'll skip to another question. So tell us a little about what's the biggest challenge you guys have run into, and how have you tackled it or worked to overcome it?
I think the biggest challenge that we have faced is getting the organization to buy into customer success and the value that we provide, and being able to get the resources that will help us get the information that we need to get the outcomes that we're trying to get to. Integrating systems, getting specific data sets into things like Salesforce that are important to us, but no one else really understands that. So understanding how to create that business case, making it relevant to the rest of the organization has been a huge challenge for us, and we're continuing to work on that every day. We've made some great progress. Understanding and rallying other teams around what you're doing. I think we have great allies with our marketing team, with our sales team, and that's starting to permeate the rest of the organization as well.
Excellent.
It's interesting. I love Doug's slide earlier with the baseball, right? And it was the whole, we are the catch-all. I mean, CS and CS Ops is no different, right? It becomes a place where it's like, I need some reporting on, something, and you're like going, well, that's not a CS thing. I mean, but it's like we go, okay, we'll do it because that's just the way we roll as customer success. And so, it being kind of pulled in multiple directions is something that happens, and I think that can easily pull us, I'm going to say, off task sometimes. And then also just seeing, barriers built up between departments. I mean, we know that when you've got struggles with your sales department, or you've got struggles with your marketing department, or with your account management team, or whatever, then all of a sudden those silos start getting built up, and it's really difficult to then work in a real cross-functional way if you don't trust each other. So, working to make sure that everybody's seeing the right information, that everybody's working on the same set of data and has visibility into what's going on with those customers, and that nobody's being left out of that loop, allows for that trust to start happening. And then you build a collaborative environment where then you can really start working through that. So, and that's a little more broad sweeping CS than just CS Ops, but certainly something that I think is really important as we look at, hey, how are we going to truly be customer success? And that is not just the customer success team, it's the entire organization has to be focused on that for it to be done well.
All right, one more question, kind of what's up next for you guys, for your CS team, your CS Ops team, like what's big on your radar right now?
Big on our radar is the implementation of Tatango. Really we're really struggling with the tool that we have now, and really trying to transform our organization and rally around a more effective, streamlined platform that's going to help us automate, help us, drive the success for that long tail. really understand the basic mechanics of customer success that we haven't really been able to deploy up until this point. So understanding how we can accelerate that and working with a partner to achieve those things.
We already have Tatango, so no. I mean, but one of the things that we're looking to do is, and I'm kind of continually, like I said before, I'm a real, I don't want to say fanatic, but I love health scores, and I love looking at different segmentation of customers in health and doing the kind of geeky data analysis to understand, okay, who's renewing and who's upselling and why. They're a green customer, who's not, they're a red customer. Let's figure out what the nuances are in between, so that way we know where we can apply pressure to get the most value out of the team that we have and the tool that we have. So, we're kind of constantly looking at and evolving in that process, and then constantly working on our journey, right? The customer journey is ever living, right? It's something that you have to continually look at and go, okay, where are we adding value and where are we not? And are you talking to your customers? I mean, I keep talking about Doug because he just talked, but he said that a minute ago. I mean, it's like, let's talk to the customers. Let's find out what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And being in the CS space and being a CS leader gives you the opportunity to go, hey, talk to me. Let's be real. Let's just have a transparent conversation about where we're wearing you out with emails, so that I can dial those back some, or how we can engage with you in a more fruitful way for you to get you to your outcomes. And so, we're kind of constantly, I would say for me, to get back to your question, is health score and continually looking at and driving through that process, and then how we evolve the journey through that across the various segments.
I think another focus for us is really to be more decisive about what we're trying to accomplish. I think we've been stuck in the analysis paralysis phase way too long, and we need to start taking action and move quickly.
So, Taylor, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. How are you going to decide what to move quickly on first? We talked about kind of driving revenue, but what would be your second factor in making that decision? And I'm putting you on the spot.
We're also aligning vertically. So trying to make sure that we understand the motions and the goals of a specific industry vertical for our customers, I think is another big focus for us and where we're going to put a lot of effort this year.
Excellent. All right, Chris, I want to come back to something you said.
Okay.
So you talked about really getting a lot of input from customers. We know that can be a challenge if we work in a larger organization that has a lot of customers. Might be easier from our big ones we talk to all the time, but that kind of long tail can fall off. How do you guys either use within your organization, operations, your CSMs, to really get that customer feedback effectively?
Yeah, that's a great question. We use a variety of different tools that integrate within our system as well, within the ecosystem. So, for example, we use AHA as a tool to capture some of that information. But what's really important as well is how we roll that up to the team. So one of the things from a process standpoint we do, and I'm sure a lot of people do, like top account calls or portfolio reviews, whatever you want to call it, but where you go through and we start looking at a variety of different information, about, some of our key customers. And as we do that, we start leveraging and kind of bubbling up, hey, what are the things that people are asking for, right? Where do we need to apply pressure from a product standpoint? And it's not just me and the CSMs, it's the CS team, it's the marketing team, it's Karen, our CMO, it's Dennis, our CRO, it's Alistair, our CEO, it's the entire product team, it's the product marketing team. I mean, this is the pulse of the company kind of call, right? And what it does is it allows you to go, hey, listen, we're going to talk about what's most important to our customers that are most important, and then we can start looking at that and then surfacing those particular items. And then start working on, hey, how are we going to address those from that standpoint? Because if they're asking for it, likely other people need it as well, and they're going to get value out of it. So from a product standpoint, that's typically how we do it.
How often do you have those discussions?
I was going to say biweekly, but that always confuses me if it's twice a week, or I could say fortnightly.
Fortnightly? Perfect.
For those of you who know what the heck that means, I had to look it up sometime.
That's your quarter word of the day.
Yeah, fortnightly, iterate fortnightly. So no, I mean, we do it every other week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. We also instituted customer advisory boards last year. How many in this room do customer advisory boards?
Not in this lifetime, but in previous one.
Okay. So we've really rallied the organization around that. We've got participation from product, from marketing, from sales, from our executive leadership team, understanding what's the pulse of the customer, what strategic initiatives are important for them as a company, for their industry, what do they see on the roadmap ahead, what challenges can we try to forecast, and how can we build the product to better serve them moving forward.
That's great because it's funny because we're actually looking, we've had customer advisory boards, but we're kind of evolving ours around the same thing too, because it's interesting. I've been on so many different cabs and it's like every one of them is just wildly different from the other one. And some of them you're going, okay, literally I'm just being pitched to for like an hour. I really am not interested, right? Or there's no thought to it and you get in and you just find yourself talking to somebody about something that's really unimportant. You go, oh, that was a waste of time. So, taking that opportunity, cabs I think are an amazing tool used right and planned well, right? Just to be able to kind of get that and surface that insight on, hey, what's really driving your key customer base?
And I think some of the more unstructured conversations that you have in cab are more valuable than the formal ones are,
Totally.
Right? So
Yeah.
if you're having
Definitely.
dinner with somebody, you're having lunch with somebody, they kind of relax, they feel a little bit more open, a little bit more transparent. And I think you learn so much in those tangential conversations, more so than you would in a formal, like, hey, here's the agenda, here's what we're sticking to format.
That's awesome.
All right, let me do a time check here. So we have a little bit of time before we jump into some questions from anyone in the audience. So I'll leave you guys with one more question, which is what would be your number one piece of advice to everyone here in the room for kind of supercharging their CS ops to grow more revenue?
Measure what matters even when you suck.
Great advice.
Bumper sticker right there.
People, I think, are afraid to measure things because they're afraid of the numbers that they're going to see. Don't be afraid to fail. I think that's probably the most important advice that I could give to you guys is always measure, even if you suck.
I should have gone first because that was too good.
It's hard to follow.
Yeah, very hard to follow. No, and you know what, I can glom onto the end of yours, which is, you're going to fail fast, and then figure out how to fix it, and then go from there, right? So, you've got to measure it. If you don't measure it, you don't know how bad you failed or where you failed, right? So make sure that what you're doing you can absolutely measure, and fail fast, and then fix it. But I would say the other thing too is, I said this earlier. You don't have to start with something massive. Like, don't think that it's, okay, well, CS Ops, I don't have a big CS Ops team, or I've got one person that's a CSM that's pretty technical. We've got a small team. I think I could maybe use them as a CS Ops function. You know what? That's perfect. Like, you can absolutely do that. And you can start small. You can start easy with that and kind of start that process, and then start building onto the motions from that, and then go from there.
I also like tacking onto that. Don't wait for perfect. That's the other one I've heard all the time is, if you wait for perfect, you will never roll the process out. You will never release the tool. It will never happen because it's never perfect. And you can't fail fast if you don't try.
Yeah. Progress, not perfection. Right?
Yes. That's a better way of saying that.
Another bumper sticker for you.
All right. How many bumper stickers have we created today?
I don't know.
10 or 15 at least, I think.
Exactly.
We've got some good ones. Okay. So I think we have a little bit of time for questions from anybody out there. What questions do y'all have about CS Ops?
Right up front. Yeah.
Sorry.
Taylor, I want to go back to your cab comment because I know you're verticalizing. And are you using verticalization with your cabs? And kind of part B of this question is, how do you handle it when you've got competitors on your cab?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So, yes, we are aligning cab vertically as well, more so for this upcoming cab that we have scheduled in March than we have in the past. The history of our product, we have a lot of customers in the restaurant space and the QSR space, and they've kind of dominated the product conversation for many, many years. So we're trying to include them as well because they're a very important part of our customer base, but we're trying to expand into the other verticals as well. So getting them a seat at the table, making sure that we have representation from every one of our target industries, has been successful for this upcoming cab, and we're going to have breakouts within those sessions for each one of those industries as well to target and workshop some specific ideas that we think are relevant to those verticals. And then what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
How do you handle competitors in your cab?
How we handle competitors in our cab. So we actually don't really have any competitors on our cab.
So you don't have any customers that are competitive with one another. That's
Okay. I was
not
like,
your competitors, but when you've got two customers that are competitors against each other and might
Yeah.
be cagey to interact.
got it. So it's funny that you asked that because we do have some customers that are competitors to us. So that's where my mind was going.
Good dynamic.
Yeah, it's very interesting because they weren't our competitors, and then the Corrigo product was acquired, and then they became competitors. So with that, I mean, it's generally a pretty transparent and open forum. Our customers are there to learn from one another and understand the value that it brings to talk with other people that are utilizing the system in different ways. I don't think in our customer space we necessarily have people that have like proprietary processes. These are facilities management people. They're not high-tech companies, right? So they're not worried about sharing specific, operational processes or strategies with one another, so that doesn't come up for us.
I will say at a previous company I worked for, we did definitely have competitors on our cab, and they would not be in the same room with each other. So we actually ended up holding multiple cabs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're going to have to do.
Yeah, that was it was in the
Same.
retail space, and like you can't get Home Depot and Lowe's in a room together. They will not. That will not work
Worlds
well.
collide. Yeah.
Yeah. Great questions.
I do have a question. So you have a product that you're using that was designed for your purpose. You created a product for customer success. How do you measure the customer success for customer success software?
That's a good one.
That is a good one. That is a good one. You know what? And it's funny because stepping into the role, that was the thing that intrigued me the absolute most about starting to work for Tatango is I get to do customer success for customer success. So, which is it's almost like this weird paradigm thing. It's like 4D. But it's technically no different. It's all about customer outcomes, right? At the end of the day, if you're my customer, I'm going to talk to you about what are the outcomes. Well, for you, outcomes are going to be probably some of the same things. Around, I want to have strong NRR. I want to have good upsells. I need to onboard and get people to value faster. So what we do, and our goal is to try to help you get to those items as quickly as possible and measure the effectiveness of them. And so, so it is an interesting twist for sure.
Interesting, very cool. And more questions? If not, there's one back there.
How do you measure the effectiveness of someone within the CS ops role?
How do you measure the effectiveness of the CS ops role?
Yeah, and how do you tie that to the compensation?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. It can be really tricky, right? Some of that because it often can be a little bit more of, I'm going to call it a back office function. So it's somebody who's supporting the CSMs. And so it can be a little tricky to measure. You can say, okay, well, KPIs could be things around, like I've mentioned health a number of times. So it's like, okay, how are we doing? Are we effective in measuring health on customers? What are we doing about that? Are you looking at some of the data? And these people are not necessarily data scientists, but sometimes they can step into that role some because if you're running a lean team, which many of us are these days, it's like, okay, you need somebody that's taking a look into that data to understand, hey, what do we need to do? How do we need to shift? And the CSMs can certainly help with that, but having somebody in an operation role that can do that helps. So does that mean that I have a KPI for them to change health score every week? No, please. But I mean, but at the same time, they're going to help us identify and understand those kind of things and give insights to the team. So it's a little bit more, I hate to say nebulous, but it kind of is. It's not like they're attacked with NRR or upsells or something like that. You have a...
I mean, for us, we're still trying to figure that out. CS Ops is a relatively new role for us. And so I have the benefit of sitting across the aisle from our CS Ops director. And so I'm like, I have an idea. I'm like, we need to see this. This is going to be really valuable to me. I just tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, Terry, can you help me out with this? And so it's more qualitative success for me. But I think as we move throughout the year, we'll understand more about what those success metrics look like in a more quantitative way.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to that too is efficiencies, right? So we've talked a lot about scale, and we've heard all day long people saying, okay, we're doing more with less, right? And so to me, CS Ops plays a really critical role in that because they're going to be driving that digital touch, the digital journey through that process. They're going to be really paramount in doing that. And so if you're able to say, for example, we're going to take this segment of customers and we're going to reduce the amount of interactions that the CSMs are having with them, but we're going to increase the interactions that they're getting from a digital touch that looks like it's coming from the CSM, okay, fantastic. So now I can build some efficiencies. My CSM, the quantity of accounts maybe that they're managing is able to go up. You're able to support more revenue on less people. That's a measurement in and of itself. So, I would say efficiency of systems and how you kind of process that is another way to measure them.
Yeah, I think the number one goal for our CS Ops person this year is to get our tool up and running, right? And that's going to measure success. If we don't get that up and running quickly, we didn't succeed. And so it's pretty cut and dry.
No
for
pressure.
Us.
From a quantitative perspective, do you all do upsells, retention? Is that something common in the CSM role at all?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Upsells, cross-sells, retention numbers, willing references, outcomes.
Okay.
I mean, join my session tomorrow to learn more.
Little plug. Yeah, and same thing here. And it's interesting because a lot of times you get into conversations around, who owns the renewal and, who's on point for this and is there, does that CSM have actually a quota that they're supposed to be hitting or not? And, you can get into very divisive arguments with people about what that might look like. But at the end of the day, we are all part of sales, whether you want to have that on your title or not. And so, the CSM is in a really unique place to be able to drive upsells, to be able to identify and help move forward expansion opportunities and things like that. So, kind of in the whole realm of cost center, it's like, what? We need to make sure that we understand that we kind of raise our hand and go, hey, guess what? I got this, and this is, I helped win and move this deal forward, because that's going to help move the conversation in a very different way as you're trying to, engage your organization about the value of customer success.
Somebody also mentioned earlier the sharpest spear, right? So if a CSM isn't comfortable in those types of conversations, bring in sales, bring in whoever in your organization can make it happen.
Yeah.
We're all a team, we're all here for one goal, and so don't be afraid to do that.
Well, I'll chime in a little bit here. We do something kind of interesting at Logic Monitor today, and my fun LM CSMs in the crowd can cheer if they're happy with the way we do things. But although we are not directly responsible for renewals or growth on the accounts, each CSM does have a unique net retention number. So they're not the ones doing the paperwork for the renewal, processing it, negotiating it. We have a renewals team for that. The same goes with growth. But they do have a net retention number for their book. So they are very much compensated on the growth and retention of their accounts. So again, I'll let them chime in on if it's a positive, but that's how we do it today. And I think it works really well with
and
outcomes.
It's interesting because healthy things grow, right? So if you've got a customer that's healthy, they're going to be growing. And so, to have an NRR number and to be expecting growth out of a book of business is the appropriate thing. You can't tell a CSM, okay, well, your job is a customer health, and by the way, you're churning at some massive percentage, and you've got no upsells. Guess what? Your customers aren't healthy. You're failing. So, so you have to kind of look at it from that lens and go, okay, I may not have a revenue number tied to you're not getting commissioned on a certain amount of upsells or whatever. But like you said, a variable on NRR I think is incredibly important because it's ultimately what the company's driving towards, and it's what you should be involved in as well.
Yeah, let me clarify my previous statement. Our CSMs don't have quotas. They're not responsible for any specific revenue number. We are measured on NRR. We are measured on our ability to grow an account, similar to what you said. I think that organic growth, if you're doing the right things and you're providing value, you're delivering outcomes, all of that stuff's going to happen anyway, barring any weird market economic things that are happening all the time, right? You can't help it if your customer goes out of business, right? We don't have control over that. But outside of that, if they are leveraging your platform in the way that they should be, you'll see that growth.
I'll have a question. So it's more on the product side, right? So diversity of people here, different CS types. I'm with product company, facilities, healthcare. Is the CS playbook, how much percentage of it is accurate for the bulk of it, and what's that customized 10% or more, whichever way you want it? Like, does the playbook work in all solution segments, industries, and verticals?
I would say yes, it does in varying degrees, right? I mean, obviously, you could take two, tech companies in the same space, and they're going to have different nuances about what they do and how they do it, and what your customer outcomes need to be. Kind of back to your question about me doing customer success for customer success. It's the same thing. It's the same playbook. The difference is, I'm looking at your outcomes, and same thing for all of our customers. Like, I like to say our customers are like snowflakes, right? I mean, they all think of them as uniquely different, and there's a lot of consistencies across those customers, in what kind of outcomes they're driving towards, but there are going to be some nuances that you have to kind of tweak to, and I think the same is based on industry or vertical or whatever. I was speaking with someone earlier, and they were talking about they are in a 401k company. I'm like, well, and they're in customer success. I'm like, that's fantastic, right? I mean, it's something that is uniquely different, yet at the same time, you can apply those same principles to ensuring a healthy experience for somebody, and that they are uniquely successful in whatever it is that you're providing them.
Very cool.
I think the framework works across all types of organizations, all shapes and sizes, right? I mean, the core concepts are always going to be there. You want to deliver that great experience. You want to deliver those outcomes. I think you tweak it based on the segmentation that you have or the engagement model that you have. But at the end of the day, the deliverables are all still the same, right? And the expectations.